That's a pretty big picture of me. Okay. All right. And again, I'm talking away here without having the screen or the microphone on. So thank you everybody for being here today. I'm going to pull up our MLS because that's going to become important for us in our conversation today. Let's see how this goes. And thank you all for being here. And hopefully you can hear me. If anybody can't hear me, please let me know, right? All right. It's kind of like, when do I get off the train? Well, one stop before I do. All right, so we're going to log into that, and then let's go back to PowerPoint. And so let's go. Okay. All right. Anyway, I didn't think it was going to be that big a picture, but I have several cameras, and so this is the one we're going to use today. So anyway, hi, everybody. Thank you for being here today. Welcome. We are going to talk about, register. And yes, and join. Okay, all right. So anyway, we are at the Greater San Diego Association of Realtors, and my name is Kevin Burke, and there is my telephone number, and there is my email address, and now the cameras are working just fine. I have a second computer going on here in the background so that I can see and make sure that I've switched screens on you so that you can actually, that I'm actually talking about what you're looking at. So anyway, that being said, let me see here. Oh, we got a pretty good group. Look at that. Hi, Rose. Welcome. Okay. I'd rather speak with you in person. So that's why my telephone number is there. But if you can't get a hold of me, and sometimes that happens, I do want to help, right? I just got off a call, 25 minutes with an agent, just helping them out in a situation that they've got. And so, that's what I like to do. And I'm not paid by SDAR to do that. I just do it because I just want you to be okay. That's all. So email may have to be the second resort. You may have to go to email, send me an email, and again, I'm happy to respond to you. So I do have some credentials, I guess, that make me qualified to speak about the subject matter. I've got a broker's license both in California, where I've been, 40-something years, since 1979, 1985, I think. But I got my license in 79. And I'm also a broker have a broker's license in Virginia, where I teach there as well. And so all that being said, good news. Let me see what else. Anything else in here important? I've taught pretty much every class that there was to teach to get your license or to renew your license. And then I finally decided to actually work with people that actually wanted to be productive in real estate rather than people that were just taking my class for 3 hours of credit. So on the right-hand side, you see I'm a big risk management guy. I'm going to chair legal affairs next year. I chaired last year risk management and consumer protection, probably my two favorite groups. And I've just got a whole bunch of stuff. I also put in their Santa Core Advisory Committee. I was the chair back in the day. And with MLS, I was chair of the Rules Committee, but never had a meeting. Nobody ever talked to me about it. And so I don't know if it was or not, but I was given the Holy Grail, as it were. So we're probably going to be talking about stuff that's going to appear to be legal. I'm not a practicing attorney. I have no desire at all. They work way harder than we do, and we make way more money than they do. I do a lot of trial work limited to testifying as an expert witness. Standard of care is my specialty. But I also do agents' duties of inspection and disclosure and market conditions, at least in San Diego County, although I think most of us know that it's pretty much up for grab here in San Diego. We're kind of a micro economy. So that being said, conversation today not intended to be a substitute for the advice of your broker, nor for that of your attorney. Please consult with them as appropriate. And when they give you advice, you need to follow their advice. People call me a lot of times and they say, hey, I talked to my broker and my broker said this. And I said, good. Yeah, you got instructions from your broker. That's exactly what you want to be following, right? Because they have to defend you. So it's all good. And they want to know what you're doing. So, okay, that being said, our webinars are intended to be interactive. Please utilize the Q&A button to ask questions or offer input. I do look forward to hearing from you. Shutting down some distractions here. So I do look forward to hearing from you. Please ask questions. It helps me to have guidance in what direction we're going to take. Okay. All right. So, and by the way, this is a webinar, and I will load these webinars I load them all up into the YouTube website. I'll give you directions for how to get there later. later today. But I'm going to be doing more podcasts. And so they will be shorter versions rather than 2 hours of listening to me and looking at my happy face. We'll be doing shorter versions of things. So, for example, I used to teach the RPA paragraph by paragraph at San Diego, and then they stopped doing that with 2 administrations ago. And so I just kind of think those things are important. If you want to know how to fill out paragraph 1 of the purchase agreement, I'm going to do a whole podcast on that. So it won't be 5 hours long. But I have been approved by the Department of Real Estate to do the RPA for continuing education. And that is a 5-hour class. And you get 5 hours of continuing education for it. I've also been approved to do the buyer representation agreement. So, and that's going to be near and dear to everybody's heart here coming up pretty soon, based on things that are happening across the country. So, and how we have an effect on real estate in other countries as well, by the way. So, so today, welcome to MLS Week. Today is really MLS Day. We're going to talk about a couple of things. So the first thing we're going to talk about this morning is we're going to talk about the rules. And again, you already see that I probably have a pretty good handle on the rules. We have had some turnover in staff at the association. So, and they're good people. They work hard. But the rules, I'm a practitioner like you. And so, again, I've been teaching the rules for quite some time. The association is probably going to have staff start to teach it, which I'm okay with that. I have other things that I think are beneficial for all of us. This afternoon, I'm going to talk about CRS tax. I'm going to actually show you how to create lists and how to find your own properties that are in pre-foreclosure. So technically, we don't have foreclosures in California because we don't do mortgages. Mortgages go to foreclosure. What we do are trustee sales. So we have essentially what's called a non-judicial foreclosure. It's a year of law school. I don't recommend you going there just to learn that. I'll teach you everything I know. But essentially, trustee sales move things along a lot faster for the lender. And there's no rescission, right, or right of redemption period involved in it. So like it is in, like, say, Florida, for example, where they do teach, where they do have mortgages, the lender has to, in Florida, the lender has to hang on to the property for 18 months just in case the borrower who defaulted is able to come back and buy it back. And so that's why a lot of states are going to trust deeds. So in a mortgage state, you have a mortgagor and a mortgagee, and in a trustee state, you have a trustor, a trustee, and a beneficiary. And so, but we'll talk all about that later on this afternoon. So on Tuesday, Halloween, the last day of October, we'll be doing fast stats, which I think is one of the nicest tools that SDAR gives you for free. That you should be printing these things and carrying them around with you and just handing them out. You put your logo. I'll show you how to put your logo on them, all your identifying information on them, and everything. And I think really that's one of your best farming pieces, right? Because what is one question that everybody is going to ask you? How's the market? And so you don't even have to have the answer. You say, here it is, here are the statistics, and I do these, once a month. And so they're good things to have. So stay tuned for that on Tuesday. And then in the afternoon, we'll be doing the Collab Center. Gone are the days of sending emails to clients with, the MLS attached to it and all that stuff. Collab Center is the way to go. Everybody that I have spoken with who I've converted to Collab Center will never go back to sending emails. And a lot of reasons for that. So that being said, let's talk today member benefits. Thanks for joining us. Our discussion of MLS rules and tools, and because I think that they're rules, but I also think that they're to help you. And so, a lot of people call me up and they say, well, so-and-so is doing this. I go, okay, well, say something. Well, I don't want to. I had one. I'll never forget it. I said to her, she plopped a listing down on my desk, and I had all these red lines and arrows and stuff on it. And she says, here, do something about that. I go, about what? She says, well, there's violations all over that thing. I said, well, why don't you turn it in? She says, well, I'm not going to be a snitch. And I always responded with, well, what are you doing to me? Are you making me a snitch? I'm okay with it. I don't have a problem. But, you all have that same resource available to you. And the MLS, our MLS does not have a policing power. They don't police I mean, with some limited exceptions, and I'll talk about that. But they don't have, they don't have our eyes and ears out there. And so if you see something, I'm going to show you how to report a violation. Everybody good with that? Okay, all right. Or what you think is a violation. We don't even call it a violation anymore. Now we call it a correction. Okay. I like the concept of correction. It's not bad, not a bad thought, right? Okay. All right. So that being said, MLS rules, and I always say it, I always get a kick out of it. I don't know where I got this from, but because knowing is better than guessing. And so I'm a strong believer that, I can sit down here right now and I can go through these rules with you, and you will probably be able to teach this class after I'm done. I'm going to show you where all the resources are. I'm going to show you the hot buttons. I also have another class, the top 10 violations that we see. We'll get a little bit of that here, but that's not the focus of our meeting today. And please remember that our MLS, they are, as I said, they're not a policing authority. They actually look at themselves as being an educational experience. And so I always told people, if the MLS reaches out to you and says, stop doing that, you might want to stop doing that, right? I mean, they're giving you a heads up, but with a couple of limited exceptions, there usually is not a penalty the first infraction. You lend out your lockbox key, that you had to go through an orientation. They're definitely going to tag you for that. No warnings on that. You're going to get tagged for that. MLS. Again, giving other people your username and password, all of those things. And I'm going to show you, we can do identity sharing, and I'll show you how, I access other people's accounts, with their permission, right? Because we share information with each other. And so, hi, Michael. And so I'll show you how to do that as well. So again, if I miss anything, if you would please interrupt me and let me know, I'm more than happy to help you. Okay. So education equals data integrity. That's our whole goal, is to make sure that people can rely on our information. And it's by the way, it's you and I relying on each other. It's also me and the public, that they're relying on my information. The third-party aggregators and the syndicators, where we sell the listings. I mean, we get paid about 2 cents a page, and that's every night, by the way. So that you can imagine that amounts to a lot of money. But when you put your listing into the multiple listing service, whoosh, it goes right up to the internet, at midnight, and so everybody's counting on us to know what we're doing, to know what we're talking about. We need to take it seriously. Okay. All right. Okay. So where do I find the MLS rules? So essentially there's two ways, and I'm going to show you how these are. You can go either to SDMLS, and let's give that a shot. I want to go in here and I want to go to SDMLS. And so I'm going to go up here to this button, and I'm going to type in SDMLS. Of course, it only has, one R in it. There we go. And this is what SDMLS looks like. Okay. Now I tend not to go here, but they have things here that are different than what they have on the SDR website. And I'm going to show you here. So over here where it says compliance, I mean, obviously under resources, I have some things in there, but I'm going to click on compliance really quick, right? Because I want to be compliant. I want to do things, I want you to be able to count on me, right? Little things I've had, and I know we're going to end up talking about lawsuits. I've had so many lawsuits in my career. Attorney asked me the other day in deposition, how many of them were you a party? And I had to think about it for a second. None of them, actually. All the lawsuits I get involved in are somebody else's lawsuits. So I'm thinking that maybe I can help you, because who are we afraid of in our world of real estate? We're afraid of only a couple of people. We're afraid of the Department of Real Estate. We're afraid of the lawyers. That's why I went to law school. What is it that they know? And I found that they got to hire me to tell them what's going on. And then finally, we're afraid of, getting a ticket for some financial thing. And so, but here I can eliminate a lot of that for you. And if you are ethical and you are trying to follow the rules, chances are pretty good that you'll be fine, right? Okay. And so remember what I always say, if you look good, you make me look good. So I want you to look good. I really do. So that being said, here's the links. Okay. here are the rules and regulations, and I'm not going to pull these up right now because they pull them up as PDFs. I've actually saved them on the computer for you. Listing exclusions, clear cooperation policy coming soon, variance requests, listing status and change reports, and then other resources. So there's a lot of stuff out there. I like to focus on down here where it says schedule of fines. And the reason is because we have to tell you what we're going to ticket you for, right? So and we'll go through it. I'm going to pull it up for you. We'll take a look. And I'm going to show you exactly what, here's what the penalties are. When you do this, we're going to do that kind of thing. And so I find that when I go through that, if you're not going to get penalized for, eating crackers in an open house, right? Because we don't have a penalty for that. So when I look at the MLS and I look at the fines, the schedule of fines, now I see, okay, so you're going to ticket me for this, you're going to ticket me for that. So we'll spend a little bit of time on that. So that's my SDMLS rules and regulations. I can also go into the MLS. There we go, the MLS, and I can go up here. See where it says MLS documents? The reason I go here is because of the San Diego 1 page. So that's this page right here. It's called the San Diego 1 page, and I can access almost everything from here. Okay, it tells me the status of my licensing. It tells me my access to Paragon, access to zip forms, to Glide, to RPR. It's called single sign-on. So I don't need to go through, open up all these sites individually. I can just go ahead and open up San Diego's 1 page and look at that. And then here's all the stuff they give you for free. Now they give it to you for free, right? But the minute you go to use it, the company like LionDesk, I like LionDesk, frankly. I mean, I don't use it, but I like it. I think it's a good program. But they're constantly trying to upsell you to the premium version of it. But that's okay. You can delete those emails, right? I mean, that's all right. You just set up a rule that gets rid of. There's your fast stats. What else? San Diego MLS, all these things. So you have all these things that are available to you that SDAR has offered you. They've made arrangements with these people to give them to you for zero in most cases. Okay. There's a good number right there. My association balance is $0. Now, for those of you who've been watching me for a while, over here on the left-hand side, my schedule, it was inundated with meetings. I was president of the association back in 19, and so I was essentially I was ex officio on every single committee. So my schedule was not my own. It was just insane. But great stuff. I love the association, and so hopefully that works for you. So anyway, going back up here, I went into Paragon, and then I'm going to go over here to where it says my documents. Is everybody with me so far? So I've shown you where you can find them in SDMLS, and now I'm showing you where you're going to find them in SDAR MLS. Now you see I'm in it, but even up here it says SDMLS Paragon RELS.com. So I'm in the SDMLS website just from a different angle. Okay, that's all. All right, but I like the rules. Rules are really cool. So in that MLS documents, I see MLS folder. There's a lot of information about Collab Center, CRS tax information. Again, we'll talk about that this afternoon. Home Snap, not a bad program, right? But down here at the bottom, it says San Diego Association of Realtors SDAR folder. Now, I personally think it should say SDMLS folder, but okay, I get it. And in this folder, I'm going to have my input forms. So this is where I learn about the various codes in the MLS. So when the MLS, when I'm input a listing, for example, certain codes that I see differently than the public sees. So for the public, we're going to write out estimated square foot. But for you and I, it'll say ESF. And so we'll get different, because that's our jargon, that's our language. Okay, so here's my residential, that's my single family home, whether it's can you say family still in California? I don't know. There's so many things changing. So that's my house, my townhouse, my twin home, my condo. And then I have my 2 to 4s. And again, I'm not going to pull each of these up or we'll be here all week. So 2 to 4s, right? Those are my, duplex, triplex, fourplex, right? And then then I have lots and land. And then I've got my rental properties for my residential rental. Fractional ownership, that's referring to timeshares, those kinds of things, co-ops. And then I have my commercial. Commercial, of course, is anything 5 and greater, right? Okay, so civil code protects the innocent buyer and the seller, if there's any such thing, in transactions that are residential 1 to 4. When I get to 5s and greater, excuse me, then I'm into commercial. And so UCC applies, because the theory is that when we get up into the 5s and greaters, the theory of law is that, you all be careful out there. And because, we're not going to get involved in what you're doing. I've seen transactions happen with no contracts, stuff like that. I mean, it just, for me, I know that the Department of Real Estate has a hard time with that, but I'm telling you that I see people do some stuff in commercial that's just amazing to me, but they get away with it. So whatever. Okay. So, and then I have my status change forms, which you're probably not going to use. My data share, you're probably not going to use that either. And you'll notice that all of these are 5 years old. Okay, I get that. But we just haven't changed them much. But so that's on the seller side. But on the buyer side of things, that the buyer, if I don't know a code, then I'll look one of these up. I'll pull up whichever field I'm in, and I'll pull up that code. Everybody good with that? Okay, that rules and regulations. So let's talk about that. I'm going to pull up the rules and regulations forms. And again, I've already saved all these on the computer, so I'm going to show you these in a minute. But here's all our forms. Here they are by date saved. Here are the MLS only. I'll talk to you about that in a minute. It was saved January the 18th. That's the most current one that we did. I think the farthest back ones were done in like the DMCA policy, Digital Millennium Copyright Act, stuff like that. But let's see now. I want to go back to my PowerPoint for just a second. And again, remember, where we're going with all this is that we're going to probably cut down the 2-hour webinars, and I'm just going to do individual webinars in each thing. Like I think I can do a schedule of fines in probably an hour, but we'll talk about that here in a minute. So there's my SDAR website. What am I going to find there? I'm going to find the rules and regulations document. I'm going to find the IBP, the changes to the model rules, the rules department policies, the quick guide, rules every member should know. And I'm going to show you all these in just a second. And the rules enforcement policy, because they have to tell you what that looks like. The fine schedule, which just doesn't mean it's a really cool schedule. It means it's what we're going to give you a ticket for, right? You're going to get spanking, okay? And then the appendix, the MLS only authorization to exclude. So, what that refers to is if you're going to do an authorization to exclude, if you are a non-realtor member, because remember, realtor members have access to zip forms, right? But if you are a non-realtor member, we've got to give you a form that you would be able to fill out, and we're going to have you do that online, and I'll show you that as well. Okay. Realtors still use the SELM form. We just got tired of creating a form that it didn't necessarily conflict with the CAR form, but the CAR form did what we needed it to do. And then we have definitions and stuff like that. So so let's go back. I just want to let's pop a couple of these up here so I can show them to you. And we'll start off with my listing refresh. So here's my listing refresh rule. And again, based on what we were looking at a second ago in the MLS, we don't like refreshing a listing. One of our agents got tagged on it fairly recently. She got confused. She was intending to withdraw a listing out of the MLS because the seller said take it off the market. They've got a tenant in there who's not being cooperative. And so instead of withdrawing the listing, she canceled the listing. Well, so the rule is pretty clear that if you cancel a listing, that a lot of this was common practice for a long period of time, where the agent would cancel the listing and then put it back in the MLS because they wanted to refresh it. And that's why they call this a listing refresh. They wanted to refresh the listing because, if you see a listing that's got, 635 days market time, you're like, what's wrong with that property? And so I don't know, there can be a lot of reasons why a property doesn't. It could have been in escrow for a long period of time, come back out again, things like that. But again, those numbers, the beginning and the ending date must match. Your listing must match the beginning and ending date that you have in the multiple listing service. All right. And so, here we'd have people arbitrarily just, canceling the listing and then putting it back in. And so our rule says that if you do that within 30 days, right here, you're going to be subject to a fine if you cancel it. Well, her intention was to withdraw it because she knew she's going to put it back on the market in a couple of weeks. But anytime you cancel listing, it may not be put back in the MLS within 30 days. It says here, or withdrawn by the same listing brokers. That's not accurate. We need to fix that. But the same, if it's under the same broker, you could get a citation, you could get a fine. Okay, all right, that's all. I mean, and they don't report the Department of Motor Vehicles or anything like that. It's just one of those things that we do. So maybe take a shorter listing period. I'll tell you, we're coming up on the end of the year. December the 31st is the most common expired listing date in our MLS. And that's true most everywhere that I go, where I'm a subscriber to many MLSs. And almost all of them expire on 12/31, and then they all show back up again on January 1, right, with a fresh market time. But that's because they don't want, they don't want people looking at a listing in the middle of January that still has a 2023 date on it, right? So that's what people tend to do. But again, your listing agreement has to match that. So if you are taking a listing today, and what are we? We're at October the 26th. You take a listing today. I don't know, you've got November, December. So I know people that will take the listing today, have it expire on the 31st, and then they'll get a new listing agreement during the following year, so that it shows a 2024 date on it. Okay, so I'm not trying to teach you how to evade the rules. I'm just telling you that that's common practice. So withdrawing a listing says I still have a contract with the seller. Okay, so why is that important? Because other agents may not solicit a withdrawn listing. A withdrawn listing says I still have a contract, and you soliciting that listing, that's going to be called, that's a tort. We're going to call that interference with contract. Okay, so it's against the law, and so you don't want to do that, right? And so withdrawn very specifically says is temporary. And by the way, if it's withdrawn and it expires at at the natural expiration date, it'll go to expire. Okay. Canceled listing won't do that. A canceled listing says, I no longer have an agreement with the seller. We don't love each other anymore. I no longer have a contract. And so as a result, go ahead, solicit the listing. Now, I don't want anybody soliciting my listing if it's only withdrawn, right? That's why you have to understand the distinction between the two. And it's a good penalty. I mean, it's a bad penalty, but anyway, canceled. So the rule of thumb is that you have 48 hours after getting all of the necessary signatures to put a listing into the multiple listing service. All the other time periods are 24 hours. So that's just an easy way to remember it. So if you're going to cancel a listing, the seller's going to cancel it. You got 24 hours to show it's canceled. Okay. Now I would, if I were a betting guy, and I'm a rules guy, so if I was a betting guy and my seller said they wanted to cancel the listing, I would use the cancellation of listing form that is included in your zip forms library. Interestingly enough, a lot of people, seller says, I want to cancel it. It's like, oh, okay, I'll cancel it. It's not your listing. It belongs to your broker. So you need to get your broker's permission. I know, well, no, I'm this powerful guy. I get to, I have this big team or whatever. I just click a button and it's canceled, right? Well, the broker may have determined that they don't want it to cancel. I mean, they may have got a lot of energy, a lot of momentum on it, a lot of kinetic energy, that kind of thing. And so it is not your right to cancel a listing. That has to be something that the broker has to approve of. So I would do the cancellation listing form. Plus, that also discusses, my compensation in the event that the seller sells it anyway. Now I have a hard date when it got canceled. And maybe the seller pays me costs. Maybe they pay me for, my expenses. And remember also that canceled listing, I have to give the owner a list of all of the buyers that were physically introduced to the property during the listing period if I want to protect myself based on the safety clause or the protection clause, as the Department of Real Estate calls it. So there's a lot of moving parts on this. And where I see people just going, I can do whatever I want, push a button. And you know what? And then you get called out on it, and now you're going to have a problem. So normally those are phone calls I get. My phone right now is on do not disturb. So when people call me right now, they go straight to voicemail because out of respect, you're here learning the rules, but they're probably going to be calling me because they got in trouble for something. Okay, so I want you to know I'm here to help, but at the same time, you got to call me. Okay, all right. An expired listing means the time period has run out. Again, if the MLS calls you up and says, send us a copy of the listing, the beginning and the ending date have to match what you've got on your listing agreement. Okay, and again, my withdrawn listing will expire of natural causes. It'll show expired when it expires. My canceled listing won't do that. It's canceled. There's no expiration. There's no date a month from now where it actually expires, because it's not a listing anymore. You canceled it. Okay. All right. And so lots of really good reading in here. Shall be removed from the active inventory on the expiration date specified. But I see, I'll tell you something. I do a lot of brokers call me in and ask them to look at their files prior to a DRE review. So literally, when's the Department of Real Estate coming in? Oh, Friday. You mean like tomorrow, Friday? And yeah. Oh, all right. Well, what the heck? We'll just go ahead. They don't like being postponed, by the way. But I'll go in and I'll look at the listing file, and I'll see no dates in it. And this is a common problem. And I know, because I've spoken with the department about it. I've spoken with the attorneys about it. And brokers will literally not put a beginning and an ending date on the listing agreement. And when we ask them why, they say, well, that way we can extend it when we want to. Well, no, you must have a writing. It's statute of frauds. The law requires it, including the Department of Real Estate requires it. Okay. I have a question. Okay. So question, Yana, hi. Did you say the agent is required to provide the seller with an entire list of prospective buyers during the time it was listed? That is correct. If you want to be protected by the safety clause in your listing agreement, so your residential listing agreement has a paragraph number, 3C, which 3B, which is the paragraph that says that it's got, how many days after the listing expires, that it includes days after cancellation of contract, right? Or any extension thereof. Then, and ours says 90 days, you put in whatever your broker tells you to do, but that's the paragraph, and it's on the state exam. So that's the paragraph that says that if someone comes to the seller and buys the house from the seller, somebody that I physically introduced to the property, or I spent time on with them, like we were on the internet, and I've got an hour of a Zoom call with them over this particular property, then I have to provide them with the list prior to expiration of the listing. Now, in the old days, it was like 3 or 5 days after expiration, but we changed all that. We said, no, if you're going to cancel a listing and you want to be protected by that clause, then you need to be providing that information prior to actually canceling the listing. Are we okay with that, Yana? I want to make sure I'm answering your question. If not, would you please let me know? Again, I always love, I wish I could make it, what we call hot mic, right? Make it so that there's a hot mic here. But part of the problem we realized in the very beginning of doing the Zoom stuff was that we found that we would unmute people so that they could speak, and then we would interact and all that. Then we'd mute them again. Then we would go on in our presentation, and then 2 minutes, 3 minutes later, all of a sudden they're back live again. Of course, they're in the potty or whatever, and they don't even know they've been unmuted. The program would just do that. So it was a problem. So it's too bad, so sad if you don't provide the list before expiration. That's true, according to the new contract. So just want to make sure it's the before expiration. Yes, absolutely has to be prior to expiration. And that's down at the bottom of page 1 of your RLA, that you will provide the seller with a list of those people that you physically introduced to the property, physically entered the property with another broker, whatever. So literally, if you're the seller's agent, now you're calling all these people, people that you've shown the property to. Hopefully you kept track of it. And can I get the name of your buyer? Because I'm trying to protect myself on my, again, what the department calls the safety clause or the protection clause. They know we've got it in the contract, and it's completely enforceable. Okay, everybody good? Yana, great question. Thank you for asking. It has to be before expiration, before cancellation, or obviously if you have an extension, you don't have to worry about that, but clearly before the extension expires as well. Okay, everybody good? Good question. Okay, this is already going in a different direction than I normally do this, but that's okay. So in here, at any time and for any reason, the MLS has the right to request a copy of the seller's written authorization to extend or renew a listing. That's the other thing that never happens, and that is you didn't do the modification of terms. So remember, modification of terms is intended to extend the listing or renew a listing. Okay, I get a whole new listing agreement signed, and the reason is because there may have been some updates to the form, since I had done the original agreement. But if you don't have that extension in writing, then you're going to get a ticket. Okay, And, I don't know. I like my money. Linda likes my money better than I do. Linda seems to always find my money, but she, I don't want to take away her dinner at IHOP or whatever. Okay, all right. So if a listing broker is requested to provide a copy of that extension or renewal, right, and doesn't do so, you got 24 hours. We're going to take it out of the MLS. So it's like it just gets bad. Normally, the MLS won't do what they tell you to do. They'll give you the opportunity to do it. And then a lot of times, like you put something in the listing, is something that you shouldn't, like open house on Sunday. You may not put that in the regular remarks section, but if you do, they're gonna send you an email. They're gonna call you on the phone, whatever. I would recommend that you follow their advice because you're doing something wrong. But usually they'll give you 48 hours, and if you don't do it within 48 hours, you get a ticket. So I don't know. I like not having tickets. It's not like they publish it on the Union Tribune, but it is what it is. False or misleading advertising and representations. True picture standard of conduct. And by the way, the Department of Real Estate uses those words. True picture, your photo of you yourself on your business card. According to the Department of Real Estate, they want that to be less than 5 years old. Okay, so I'm like the picture of Dorian Gray. So I look exactly as I did 5 years ago. Frankly, exactly as I did 10 years ago. Although when I had my picture taken 5 years ago, I was wearing a tie. And I just don't wear ties anymore, except in court or in deposition. A lot of my depositions are Zoom platform or whatever. Okay, so, but true picture, that's why the Department of Real Estate says, some of you using photos like from your high school dating days, and those are not you anymore, right? So, participant subscribers, blah, 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 blah. So here's all that stuff. I'm not going to read all this to you. We'll never get out of here. Anything special in there? Engage in deceptive or unauthorized framing of real estate brokerage websites. So, creating your own, manipulating the data. So if you're getting an IDX feed, which most of us have that, we have a service that allows the seller or the buyer to access the MLS through our portal, not our username and password, but through our portal. So they see client handouts and stuff like that. But if you do anything to work that, you're going to get a ticket. Okay. All right. So what else? Your IDX feed has to be clean. It has to, as it comes to you, that's how it goes up on your website. I was talking to a broker just a few minutes ago, and it's interesting. I had a comment that there was a certain marketing company out there that was making a lot of money as a marketing company. They said repeatedly, "We're not a real estate brokerage. We're not a real estate brokerage." Then one day they became a brokerage. They literally around the country got real estate brokers licenses across the country, and then all of a sudden they're a brokerage. Well, they no longer had the ability to manipulate the listings that we were giving to them, we're selling to them. Now they're an IDX feed like everybody else, right? So I don't know. People still tell me today, "Oh yeah, I go to this person's website." I go, "Okay, well that's nice, but you get the same thing off my website, right? Because we're not allowed to manipulate the data." Okay, all right, okay, good. What else? Anything else in there? I think that's it for that one. And by the way, I will send all of this to you. Okay, so I want you to have it, but I will happily send all this to you. So citation enforcement, let's talk about that. Here's the rules enforcement policy. We want compliance. Again, we don't have members of the MLS. We have subscribers or participants, and so you have signed a contract with the MLS to abide by the rules. Among those rules, thou shalt not share your lockbox. Thou shalt not share your key. Thou shalt not, give people your username and password. Those are all things that we do. And then if you're going to file a complaint against someone else, you got to do it within 180 days from the time the rules violation took place, whatever that is. So let's take a look. I want to go back and I want to pull up. Let's pull up a listing. Should I pull up one of my own? Let me see. I don't have any of this listing. Well, let's pull up my favorite, which was 811 America Way, a property that I owned for quite some time, and I still kick myself for selling it, but the timing was just such. I sold a property in Solana Beach just so I could go to law school. So here's a copy of the listing from 1996. Larry Lessie had the listing back then, and so when you go into the MLS, I ended up buying the property from Larry actually. A good guy, been around a long time. Oh, looks like been around longer. Look at that. Anyway, I don't know if he's still alive, but God love Larry. Okay, so of course he reported himself as being the selling agent, but he wasn't. I was. But all right. So up here's this red button. If you hover over the red button, it says correction. It used to say violation. We don't have it. We don't have it say violation because we don't know if it's a violation. It's really just it needs attention. So we're not going to get Larry in trouble again. I don't even know if he's still alive. I mean, this was 20 years ago. When was this listing? 96. So over 20 years, 25 years ago. So anyway, I'm going to click on report the correction button. Here's the screen you end up getting. Now, I want to be really clear about this, that your complaints are anonymous. Okay, so why wouldn't you? If you've got something, I mean, I send things in all the time. I go, you know what? I'm just kind of thinking that you're not supposed to do that. And so I'll usually send it in. I'll click on the correction button, and then I'll say, hey, you know what? I'm not sure, but the square footage is way off, or they made a comment about open house on Sunday, something like that. Is that a violation? I usually put it in the form of a question. And so our MLS is really good. They respond to all, much like the Department of Real Estate, they have to respond to all the complaints, right? They have to by law. Well, not the MLS, but the DRE has to by law. So, if you get that call from the Department of Real Estate, they're doing it just because somebody filed a complaint. That's all. Definitely take their call. I had an interesting conversation with the district manager some years ago, and she said 80% of the time when we reach out to a broker, they don't call us back. I'm like, you didn't call the Department of Real Estate back? I mean, I go down there. I mean, if I would go down there. I would knock on the door. I would say, "How are you? I'm Kevin. Take me in shackles." No, they're not going to do that. They can't arrest. They don't have any arresting authority, right? But I had one time when somebody filed a complaint, so I went down there. It turned out that the guy that filed the complaint also filed it with the Bar Association, as saying that I was practicing law without a license. It's called the UPL, Unauthorized Practice of Law. And so it turned out, and clearly I have all my documentation says I don't do that. But what turned out was I remembered the guy's name. The department wouldn't give me the complaint letter, but the Bar Association did. So they gave me a copy of the complaint letter, and it was, the last name looked awfully familiar. And then I remember it's in a court case I'm in, a trial that I'm in, where this individual was suing the owner, the previous owner of a property, and I was defending that owner. And I remembered the husband's last name on the other side was a different last name than the one filing the lawsuit. And sure enough, that's who it was. I turned that person into both the Department of Real Estate for filing a false claim, as well as to the Bar Association, and they went after him. So just be aware. When you do it in here, you put your cursor in there, and then you type something in there. It's anonymous to the extent that the MLS knows who filed it, because they may have some questions for you. And sometimes they'll call me and they'll say, well, are you asking this question or is it that question? Because sometimes it can be a little unclear, right? It's that ADHD thing going on, okay? So, that's cool, because I like our MLS. I like the DRE. I love the DRE, right? They're great. So, but anyway, that's what this does. Now, they don't send a copy of this to the person that you complained about, saying, hey, guess what? Kevin filed a complaint against you. Yeah, he said all these bad things. No, they don't do that. Okay, that's not what they do. So your complaint is anonymous, but they just need to be able to get a hold of you so that they may have a question to ask you. Okay, and so again, I'm telling you this from the inside. Everybody got that? So I'm not going to send this, because then they'll probably call me and say, Kev, what are you up to? Right? So I'm going to hit cancel. Okay, so but that's my correction button. That's how I file a complaint. But we also could file the complaint in writing, and we have that form as well. Okay, so I'm just checking, make sure you all can see this stuff. So that's what all this is: formal complaints. We have a form for it. In fact, did I pull it up? Here we are, a formal complaint form, formal rules violation report. You can just send an email to rules@sdmls.com. That's the easiest way to do it. But okay, I've never filled out this form. I'll just send them an email. Listen, I got that memorized, right? I have people send me, I'm on everybody's list, right? So they send me this thing that says, not in the MLS. And so I go, oh, really? Oh, that's a violation, I think. So I'll forward it to rules@sdmls.com, and I'll say, do we have the address? Did they file an authorization to exclude the property from the MLS? And that's going to be this form right here. This is the seller's instruction to exclude the listing from the multiple listing service and days on the market. Okay, and so we added that in there. But this is the form that you would use. It's the CAR SDR form SELM, and it's in your Zip Forms library. And this is what it looks like, and explains to the seller that that there are some significant advantages to having your property in the multiple listing service. Now, it already says most of this in the listing agreement, but now we have a form specifically for that purpose that says that it's kind of important. So first of all, nothing here really applies to us except paragraph number 4. All right. Why? Because, well, I'm sorry, the whole thing applies to us, but we're clearly in clear cooperation, right? We clearly do that. We do require that our brokers put the property into the multiple listing service. So, 3A applies to us. And so, the rest of it, 3D, I wouldn't fill out 3D because it says that our MLS has not adopted NAR's clear cooperation policy, and that's not true. So you wouldn't fill in any of this stuff. So most times we just jump to 4, right? And in 4, do not market the property immediately, begin marketing it at some further date, right? I have a tenant we're getting rid of, I'm painting it this weekend, put it on next Friday. That's what that paragraph is for. That's what 4A is for. 4B says during the entire listing period. Now, so does that mean you cannot market the property? The answer is yes. That means you may not market the property the minute that you market the property to the public. That means put a sign in the yard, put a flyer in the window, flyer in your office window, right? You can share it in your intranet, but the minute you put it on the internet to everybody to see, now you're going to be in violation. So you'll have 24 hours. Once you do that, you've got to put it in the MLS. And here it says it right here. And I remember we argued, I remember being at NAR and they were arguing about whether or not that rule should be 1 calendar day or 1 business day. And we finally settled on 1 business day. Okay. And so regardless, so what do you, and I have a question. Let me take a look at the question because I think I know where you go. Hi, Rose. Can you please clarify national clear cooperation policy? So Rose, we agree we agree in San Diego County, if you're a subscriber to the SDMLS, frankly, most every MLS I know of in California, I don't know of any exceptions to it, but that's just me, I don't know. But we all agree that we share our listings with each other. Now, I do a 2-hour class on the subject, but really don't need all that. Essentially, we all agree to cooperate with each other. What was happening, the reason that the clear cooperation policy came about was, the market was pretty hot at one point for sellers. And so agents were, not putting them in the multiple listing service, trying to sell them themselves, doing all that kind of stuff. Remember, it's a bad thing. See all this up here? These are all the bad things that can happen when you do that. By the way, potential fair housing violations. The FBI and the DRE have a task force in San Diego looking for those zero market time transactions in the MLS. In the old days, we used to see sold before processing. Well, there's always the hint that, the foreseeable plaintiff, as we call them in law school, the Paulsgraf case, the foreseeable plaintiff is every protected class other than the one you sold it to. Right? So race, origin, national origin, religious, familial status, military status now too in California, thankfully. But those are all the protected. We have 22 protected classes in California. The one we don't have that I think we should have is the one that we do have in Virginia, and that's elderliness, which you can see I clearly qualify for that. Okay, all right, and we don't have that in California. I think that's important, right? Would everybody agree? Okay, so Rose, I hope I answered your question. But here's what happens under 4B. Don't market it to the public during the listing period. So if I do something to market it to the public, I got 1 day. I got to put it in the MLS with one day. Okay. But the seller can always, and first of all, I would not market it to anyone unless I had written authorization from the seller to do so. So written authorization. Now, can it be an email? I would argue yes. You could get an email from the seller that says, okay, you've had the listing for 3 months. Let's go ahead and put it on the market. Okay. All right. I get it. Okay. Because and so if I have an instruction from them, I would rather have a modification of terms. That's the CAR form for that, right? I'd rather have that modification of terms because then that protects me from my own MLS, right? Email, I'd argue that maybe that's okay, but emails aren't clear about that. And so this rule I'm talking to you about is not only from when you take the listing. This rule also applies if you go 3 months down the way, you've been marketing the property in the MLS, and then all of a sudden the seller says, take it off the market, like in our scenario where the agent was told to take it off the market because we're trying to get rid of the tenant, right? And so they canceled it. They should not have done that. Well, once you take a property off the market, same rule applies. I got to have that modification of terms, and then I need to have them sign this. Okay, so this is that one little piece that people miss. All right, everybody good with that? Okay, so I'm telling you the rules, because I don't like getting blindsided by stuff either. I sat out in front of the Del Mar post office one. It was so, I had a really good friend. I used to work with San Diego County Motor Officers Association, and so I'm leaving the post office on 15th Street, and I look up at the traffic light up on Camino Del Mar, and there's one of my buddies on a motor, and he sees me, and he does an immediate. I mean, how do you do a right-hand turn, a 90-degree turn? And he comes down, he parks next to me, and we just sit out there talking for 45 minutes, right? And of course, but he's always watching around what's going on, and so he probably pulled over 20 people who literally were going down 15th Street and then crossing the double yellow and parking on the other side of the road. Well, that you broke the 90-degree plane, so that becomes an illegal U-turn. Now, how many of us know that, right? And so, but he must have gotten 20 people say, come over here. And then they would come over there, and I'd be sitting there, oh God, I know these people. And he would say, you just made an illegal U-turn. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. He'd give a little speech for a minute. Then he'd say, if I see you do it again, I'll give you a ticket. Okay. And so, but I don't want to learn that way. I want to learn this way. I want to learn by these rules. But it was a great experience for me. I mean, people looking at me like, oh, who's this guy? So, but anyway, he's a good friend of mine. He's since retired, but he was certainly. Motorcycle officers are very. He was a deputy, but motors are a very special type of person. So, okay, so there's my authorization to exclude. I wanted to show you that. Okay. And then back to my citation enforcement policies. So, here's what happens if you get called in on something. I was appellate judge with Sandicor for many years, never had a case. And I called them up and I said, how come I never get any cases? They said, because every time they see your name on it, they just figure, forget it. We're not going to get anywhere with that. Well, because I follow the rules, right? And so, sometimes people just don't know what the rules are. I would throw yourself on the mercy of the court, right? That kind of thing. So appeals and stuff like that, that's what this is all about. Okay. So non-response, never a good answer. Okay. Like the Department of Real Estate, 80% of brokers don't respond to them. I just don't think that's very bright. But okay, like I said, I go down, knock on the door. Hey, how you doing? I'm Kevin. I brought you some water. Here you go. Anonymous complaints. Okay, respondent of anonymous complaint. Integrity of the database. That's what we're talking about. We see people doing all kinds of crazy stuff. During my tenure as chair of Sandicor Advisory Committee, we have those shadow zips where agents would put they would first of all, they were putting a property into a zip code that it wasn't in. And so that created some serious problems with appraisers and things like that, that ripple effect, then we created shadow zips, which said you could input the listing in like up to 2 other zip codes just because it doesn't look and the feel of Rancho Santa Fe or whatever like that. Oh, what a nightmare. 5 years later, we got rid of that whole rule because it just created a mess out of our database. And it's the integrity of our database that's really, really important. I need to be able to count on you that you looked up the property to make sure that it's on sewer, not septic, right? Or that it's on electric, not propane. I'm counting on you to know what those are. Or you put the MLS, you put the property into the multiple listing service, you copied the last person's listing. The homeowner's dues were $120 a month, but today they're $480 a month. I write an offer on the property. That's going to be a big surprise for the buyer, but you were copying somebody else's homework. And so again, as a college professor, I always told everybody, don't do that. Okay. And then we, excuse me, I'll show you the rules in just a second. Then we have this other rule that says that if you violate the same rule within a year, we're going to double the fine. Okay. Up to a maximum of $5,000. Okay. Third violation, we're going to cut you off. Okay. And I've had that happen to, I was management of one of the largest brokerages in San Diego County. And we had one of our broker associates who just kept doing the same thing again and again. And so they turned off his MLS, which meant I had to input all of his listings. I had to do all his, I'm like, I'm not doing that. And so I said, you call them up and you find out what you can do to make up for it. And so he's very humiliated by the whole thing. And so, ironically enough, they made him come sit in on my rules class, when I was teaching the rules for the new member orientation. Okay. So I guess that was appropriate. So it's either that or a $2,500 ticket. I don't know, whichever one you want. Right. Okay. All right. So anything else in there? No. Questions about any of that? We talked about the form. Here's the rules and departmental policies. I'm not going to go through all of these, although maybe I should. Room size dimensions. Does that make anybody speak English? Does that make any sense to you? It should be room dimensions, right? Not room size dimensions. And by the way, it's length times width. It's not length times width times height. That would be volume, right? And so we're not filling the room up with water. Okay, so the room dimensions are required. You must put them in. That's why I always tell people, when you go on a listing appointment, take that listing input sheet with you. I know that you got people telling you, oh no, I just input it in the MLS on the fly. Well, it's like a cheat sheet. It's like, we're going to read you your rights, not memorize them. So you take the cheat sheet with you, if you want to call it that, and then you fill it out as you go. And there are things on there you've got to do. One of them is measure the rooms. Okay, you have to measure the rooms. Do not take the other agent's word for how big the rooms are. I had a buyer walk in on day of closing into a property, and the buyer says, this room is not as it's represented in the mobile listing service. And I said, what do you mean by that? They said, well, because it's smaller, my ottoman will not fit in here. Now, and so I want out of this deal. And I said, you're going to need to call your lawyer. And so needless to say, they closed the deal. What really happened was they found a property like better up in Encinitas. And that's what they were trying to do. They're trying to get out of this deal so that they could go buy the house up in Encinitas, of course, without me, right? But, you have plenty of time to investigate the property, including dimensions, things like that. But we require it here. We had a whole bunch of people leaving our MLS for a neighboring MLS until they got there. They realized they don't have the room dimensions. We really rely on that. They also didn't have the Melrose information, which is a statutory disclosure, right? So little things like that. Under construction, listing with an accepted offer pending cancellation of an escrow. This is what you do if your escrow is canceling as a seller's agent. You could put it back on the market, but you got to follow the rules. And so misuse of the remarks, variable range pricing. I don't see a lot of people doing that anymore, but all right, if you do, you got certain rules you got to follow. Please do not contact sellers on expired listings where the seller has requested no solicitation. You can put that in the confidential remarks. I did have a case where the broker put into the remarks section, if you are with such and such a company, do not contact the seller, because that company had a reputation for contacting expired listings. And so that was a ticket, okay, because you're specifying a particular company, and that was just not nice. Let's just say it that way. Showing exceptions. Remember, your property has to be available for show. If you are incoming soon, no showing. So Rose, no showing, no open house, no tour. If you do any of those things, you've got to put it into active status. Okay, coming soon, by the way, is good for 21 days. If you don't do anything to the listing in that period of time, we're automatically going to make it active for you. Okay, because you can only have it for 21 days. Okay, all right. Anything else in there? Let's see here. I guess that's most everything. Advertising, MLS printed data, material, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you may not use the active addresses of neighboring properties in your propaganda, in your printed material. That includes pending, because there's been no change of ownership yet. The sold listings are public records, so we don't care. You can go ahead and do that. Again, that's Article 12. You can go ahead and you want to make sure everybody's very clear that you are not the seller's agent, right? Listing agent and the selling agent may have claimed to have sold the property. Photos, by the way, I had one where a broker, I sold a property for a good friend of mine who's a real estate attorney and a real estate broker and a fellow instructor speaking at Mount SAC. He retired a couple months ago now, after many, many years of being there. And so I had his property on the market. Another broker came in to advertise, they wanted to send around a flyer about, this property sold. They took my pictures out of the MLS. The attorney went after them. And so that got really ugly. There's a lot of little moves that were made to try to keep, by the broker, to try to keep from being subject to penalty. And every time they did something, it just got worse. So question, must be available for showings. What about if you have a seller who does not want showings until after an accepted contract? I get those a lot. Is that against MLS rules? And so we did have that back up here where it says shown with accepted offer is permitted. MLS status must be active before showing it. So it is a showing exception, Rose, that you can have it in there. We want you to make the property available, but we also understand that there are going to be certain circumstances where we just can't make the property available. I mean, I've had that happen. I've had tenants that were, I had a tenant in a property I owned on Tiverton Road, and I couldn't sell it, for the previous owner, so I bought it. And then I had the same problems. He would schedule, he would say, "Oh yeah, I'm happy to show it." Never give them a reduction in rent to show that, to be cooperative in showing, because they never ever perform to that. I've just never had anybody do that. They tell you yes, and then they never do it. So, I always give them a bonus at closing. I'll do that, but I don't give it to them, in the monthly rent. Or they'll say they'll do it, but they never do. So in this case, I bought the property, and they did the same thing. They would make it, people call them up, make arrangements to show the property, and then they would conveniently not be there. And so what's their excuse? Well, we went shopping, we got tied up, whatever. See that? Thank you, Yana. Thank you. Oh, that was your question. That was not Rose's. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to misspeak there. So anyway, in that case, I got rid of the tenant, right? And then I sold it right away after that. And so, in fact, I sold it to a friend of mine who wanted the property. So those are my rules. These are the MLS service rules, generally speaking. Here are my rules every member should know. And so again, the rules, here are the actual MLS rules. It's 60 pages, right? I mean, look here, it's actually how many pages? 67 pages. Okay, so, but we're going to talk about these things. So you see how everything has, 4.6, 4.10, 5.2.1. So those are all of my headings. Those are going to become very important in a second when I show you the citation of fines, right? Or schedule of fines. Okay, so I can go into the MLS. They have to tell me what it is they're going to ding me for. And so, here it is. And here are the breakdowns of everything. So like vacancies, vacancies and unexpired terms shall be filled. And this is going to be in the case of those people that are on the committee. So, okay. So, and then we have all this other stuff. So like I said, again, you can read all this. And again, I'm a big rules guy. I have actually read all this. Registered assistant access, for example. So you may not share your username and password with anyone. So I turned in a brokerage firm up in Oceanside. They had 14 agents working with them, and everybody was using the broker's MLS access. Well, there's a lot of reasons why that's a problem. Like you have a disgruntled employee who goes in and puts some fair housing remark violation in the MLS and then quits. You don't even know it's there, and then next person calls you as the FBI. I mean, those are going to be you don't want a federal violation because there's no E&O coverage for that. But anyway, so I turned them in, and so all of a sudden 14 new members or new subscribers to the MLS. Okay, and so again, I want fairness for everybody, and you and I are paying our dues, and then there's 14 people who are not paying our dues and getting the benefit of what we're getting and we're paying for. So that's the register. You can have your assistant. It's really simple. Your assistant goes down or contacts SDMLS and gets assistant access. They get access to the MLS. It's like $25 a quarter. It's not like what the rest of us pay, but they have limited availability of what they can do with it. Okay, and they sign a contract with the MLS that they're bound to as well. So I'm always happy to know that everybody that's accessing our MLS has signed a contract that agrees to the same rules that I've agreed to. I kind of think that's fair. Okay. All right. So listing broker defined, denied application. So here's all this happy stuff. So let's cut through this because, like I said, we can sit here. I can read it to you, but I'm actually teaching a class Sunday in Virginia live in person. So yeah, I'll be there. I asked the school that I've been teaching for these people for quite a few years, and I said, so how do you want me to teach this? Because I can get through this in no time. And they said, well, just read the book to them. I said, I am not reading the book to anybody. So anyway, I make it very, very interesting, but I'm not reading you. It's not a bedtime story. Okay. All right. So that being said, let's go ahead. I'm gonna leave that up for right now. I mentioned earlier the seller's instruction to exclude the listing. So this was the form, but we actually have a different, if you are not a realtor member, let me pull up, if you're not a realtor member, let's look to see where that is. So that's going to be, I'm going to go over here to the SDMLS, and I'm going to look for the, where to go? Oh, here we go. It's up here. Listing exclusion. So I click on listing exclusion. Now for you and I, we're going to use the CAR form. But if you are not a realtor member, you don't have access to the CAR form, right? So then we have an online submission. So this is where if you are a non-realtor member, which I guess you could possibly be here in this class, but we'll have that listing exclusion notification form. Again, remember that you must put the listing into the multiple listing service within 48 hours of receiving all the necessary signatures, or you have to send a copy of the listing along with the form to the MLS within that same 48-hour period of time. So here's what it looks like. So it probably doesn't apply to most of the people here today, but this is my listing date, expiration date. This is where I put all that information in there, and then I upload the form. I could send them the SDLM. I could just email it to them. There's a lot of different ways. I don't know that they require that you fill out the form, but this is the form that we fill out. That's why I don't understand why the SDLM is in there. But this is the form that you fill out if you are not, don't have access to the SDLM. Anybody have any questions about any of that? Don't see any there. I got people coming and going here. Okay, all right. Okay, so that being said, I can get rid of that. Back to Paragon. Let's head back over to where I was previously. That was my instruction to exclude. Here's my rules and regulations. I'm going to leave that open for now. Rules every member should know. Good stuff. Here's access to all these forms. Mandatory submission of photographs. We found, I'll never forget, we had a gal that we contacted years ago that had put a listing in the wrong zip code. And so we contacted her and said, you need to put it in the right zip code. And they said, no. And so, no. And so they said, no. And so the rules committee, Dana Moore at the time, who I love Dana, she was great. And she said, well, we'll find you. And they said, go ahead. And I'm going to make, $80,000 selling this property, and it'll sell before the fine even gets to me. But, fine, send me a fine. So I just thought that was a really weird way to do real estate. I just kind of think that it's either in the zip code or it isn't. And one of the many reasons why we always want to be truthful in our advertising is that we need to be able to defend what we did. Okay, so mandatory photographs. You've got 72 hours to put the pictures in there. At least one picture of the subject property or the amenities or the views from the subject property. And they put "from" in here in caps because how many times you go out to show a property that said panoramic whitewater ocean views, and then you get out there, and the only way you can see that is by standing on the toilet in the primary bathroom, we call them now. That's just so irritating. Or yeah, you got great views from the down at the bottom of the hill at the beginning of the complex, but no views from this unit. So that's one of the reasons that we have the rules that we have for those things. You may not put a photograph of yourself. We had an agent who. Not me personally, but there was an agent who, every time they sold a property, they had a sign that says, another so-and-so, another sold, happy customer by so-and-so, homes, and a picture of them in their Mercedes convertible with the roof down. And that was just clearly a violation. So like that happened like one time, lasted about 15 minutes. They got a ticket for that, but you could do 75 photos. I took a listing out in Hamul on a piece of dirt, and the owner went out and had photos taken of the property, and it was great. They had the Sam not Sam Shepard, I know he just passed away, but the other guy, the deep gravelly voice, his narration of the property and all that, it was somebody that sounded like him. It wasn't him, but boy, they did a great job on that. I didn't have to take any pictures. They had drones overhead, that kind of thing. So, but it has to be something about the property. You may not put a picture of the for sale sign in there. They'll contact you and they'll say, get that picture out of there because it's got your contact information in it. And then people say, well, I want my contact information in it. No, that's a violation. So get that out of there. And if you don't take that out of there, we have software that we can redact the picture for you. That's really ugly. Essentially, this haze right there where the picture was. We see people do it, where the sign's in the window, they take a picture of that, and it's like, no. Listen, just play by the rules. You still get all your marketing. I'm going to show you a neat trick here in a second about how to do a bunch of advertising for free. So do not text, don't put in, text me at this number. You may not put in that the property's vacant, things like that. But mandatory photographs, you'll get a notice right away. If you don't put the picture in when you put the listing in, you'll get an email that'll say, hey, you know what? There's no picture. You got 72 hours. We're going to fine you. It's like $150. I mean, I don't know, maybe that's not a big deal for some people, but it is to me. So let's see what else. Misuse the remarks section. So the regular remarks section is kind of sacrosanct, right? So only the physical characteristics of the property and or the community are allowed in the remarks and the supplemental. Remarks and supplemental, I never understood why they were so separated, so far apart from each other in our MLS, because essentially they have the same rules applied to them. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. So, whoops, where's my share? Here's share. Let's go back in here. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to input a listing. I'm not really going to input a listing, right? Okay, but I love our MLS. I mean, they're very tolerant of me. Sometimes I make a mistake. So, but anyway, so I'm going to input. This is listings, and so where's my listing? Maintain. No, I want to add a listing. So here I'm going to click on my add a listing button, and in here I have all these fields that I'm going to fill out. And by the way, a little shortcut for you is go up here to tax autofill, click on that in the very beginning, and then fill in the required information, and it'll fill in most of your information for you. It'll fill in, quite a bit, like 15 of the fields already. So over here on the left-hand side is my add picture. So when I click on that, it's not letting me do it because I haven't started this process here, but literally down here on the bottom, I've got 224 possible fields. 76 of them are required, but just because it knows who I am, 65 of them are considered complete, right? It's a residential, it's a new listing, it's got my name, it's got my company. Those were all required fields that automatically filled in, okay? All right, but I promised you that I would show you, I'm gonna close all of the containers and I'm gonna go down to the remarks. So the remarks. Here are the remarks. So in here is where I can put stuff about the property, right? Something about the property, the physical characteristics of the property, etc. The supplemental remarks is an extension of that. I think they should be contiguous. I think that when people pull it up in the MLS, I think it should be one great big, blob. Okay. But then we also have our confidential remarks, and that's going to be the part that you and I share with each other. Okay, alarm codes, vacancy of the property, all those things do not belong in the regular remarks section. I remember I was doing the new member orientation, and I remember there was a case that we had where the agent actually put the alarm code for the home into the regular remarks section. And of course, it was in Rancho Santa Fe, and Rancho Santa Fe has more attorneys per capita than anywhere else in the world. And bingo, they got one. Very, very unhappy seller. Because here now their property has been compromised. So don't do that, okay? But confidential remarks. So, if I've got animals on the property, I always put in dog will bite, if it's a dog, right? Dog will bite, because dogs bite. And we can't ask them why they bit, right? But, sure enough, I don't want some child injured or something like that. I mean, I've got a grandkid now, and it's like, it would it'd be horrible to have something happen. But that's what I do. I put in there, in the confidential remarks, I can say things as if I'm speaking to you, and that's why we don't share the agent handout with clients. We don't include them in the brochure box in front of the house. We don't hand them out to people inside the house at the open house. We don't do that. We give them the client handout because it redacts all that confidential information, confidential between you and me. Okay. All right. Okay. Directions to the property, please fill that out. But what I wanted to show you was the advertising remarks. This is the coolest thing ever. I remember Ray Ewing, who was our president of Sandacor, coming to me. I was getting ready to run a pitch session in Solana Beach. And he came to me and said, we're going to be doing this advertising remarks thing, and we want your opinion on it. And I looked at it and went, hey, this is the cat's meow. This is the coolest thing ever. Why? Because, so, when I said to you earlier today, I said, that we sell the listings, every night at midnight to the third-party aggregators, the syndicators out there that are now blasting it, like List Hub, they're blasting it all over the world, right? So, we're getting, the MLS is getting paid for that, right? But unfortunately, what they do with it after they get it, we don't really have any control over. Okay, unless of course they became a brokerage, in which case we do. But we're just selling it to them. We give them rules to follow, and then it's tough for us to enforce it. But so what they were doing was they were selling your listing to another real estate agent. So another real estate agent would have their name and their photo next to your listing on that company's website. Okay. And so we thought, well, that's not really fair, right? Because they're representing it as if that is the agent, right? And so I think Rose asked the question earlier, but the field that they have to, by contract with us, give credit to the broker that actually has the listing. So that's usually really small print underneath the listing that, on their website that says, provided courtesy of XYZ brokerage, whatever. Okay. If you're with XYZ, I apologize. But anyway, so we realized, well, why don't we just do an end around on that? We went ahead and we created advertising remarks so that you could actually advertise the property, so that they had to publish your advertising remarks right there at the listing. So because is this person from Iowa going to know anything about my house for sale? And who's going to know better than me my seller's agenda, right? Okay, so that's why we did that. Now there's a little question mark over here. If you hover over it, it gives you all this stuff. The key ingredient, remember how we were talking about the rules earlier? The key ingredient, you see where it says rules 12.5.1. So you go to the rules page and you look at 12.5.1. And then down further, it talks about other sections and things like that. So they got some update. They're going to have to update some information because they're referencing Trulia and Zilia. I always call them Gulia or Pillow and Gulia. So anyway, so it's the goal of advertising remarks to provide the consumer with agent contact information that is prominently displayed and makes it clear on how to contact the listing agent directly. The advertising remarks field will not appear in any Paragon system reports, email reports, or Client Connect. So in here, what do we put in ours? Please contact official seller's agent, because we don't have listing agents anymore. Seller's agent, then I put my name, and I put my phone number, and I put my email address, right? So according to this and according to the rule, I can do that, okay? All right, and why? Because we want to make it clear that that person over there on the side of the listing is not the listing agent, not the seller's agent. Okay, is everybody good with that? So that little piece of tidbit right there should just change your world, right? This is where you can put all kinds of stuff in there, follow the rules, okay? But you can put your contact information, including phone numbers, et cetera, and open house information, things like that, okay? All right, so see right here, it says, start it, it says it right there. Okay, so I can't do it without hovering over it. So anyway, if you read it, you'll see all these crazy things you can do. 99% of the real estate agents I speak with have no idea that we can do that. Okay, so I recommend that you take advantage of that. That's my little tidbit that, again, we do these in all of our listings and our company-wide in our listings so that everybody can see the contact information, telephone number, email address, more pictures at, all that kind of stuff. Okay, is that good? Everybody okay with that? That's kind of why I do that. All right, okay. Let's go to, where were we? Every member should know, right? So status changes 24 hours. Remember what I told you before? 48 hours after obtaining all the necessary signatures, you must put it in the MLS, okay? Subject to coming soon. All right, everything else is 24 hours, okay? Everything. Active status, and we have one of these right now that's not going to go well for these people, but we have a property under contract that is still showing as active. it's not our listing, it's the other guy's listing. So we're going to wait until after we close it so we don't mess up our deal, and then they're going to get reported. So if you are in active status, that means you have no offer accepted, with or without contingencies. It doesn't matter. Okay, property is available for showings. Okay, so coming soon status, valid listing agreement exists and no offer has been accepted, because if there is one, you got to put it in the MLS. Not available for showing or open house. There's no showings. This just says it's coming. Okay, so to anyone by anyone for a maximum period of 21 days. And the listing broker certifies there will be no property showings to anyone by anyone. Okay, and then again, it must be changed the minute you start showing it off. So withdrawn again, we talked about that earlier. I still have a listing agreement with the seller, canceled. We don't love each other anymore. We've canceled the listing agreement. And then there's clear cooperation again. We've talked about this about 5 or 6 times. So again, I will send all this to you, so that you have it. So my holdout is going to be my schedule of fines. Okay, so I love my schedule of fines because the whole world revolves around this. And so the whole MLS world revolves around this. And so this is the Appendix B that we saw earlier when we were in the MLS. So let me take you back to MLS documents. And so here, where is it? Right here, SDMLS fine schedule. So this shows up as Appendix B. Over here, you see Appendix B. Okay, that's where it is in the rules. Okay, so let's take a look at it. So first thing I notice is that it's the San Diego MLS. Violations may result in a hearing with the possibility of penalty in excess of the fine, as stated in the schedule, including disciplinary action and termination of MLS services. They will cut you off. Okay, third violation. So remember when I was doing the new member orientation. So sharing your lockbox key with someone is a $2,500 ticket. It's a big deal. We told you at orientation. I'm going to scroll down to that one because that's one of my favorites. Okay, so here it is right here, 13.2, use of a smart card other than the registered owner. So in other words, you lent your card out to somebody. Okay, so that's the biggest one we got. Everybody always says, what's the biggest ticket we have? $2,500. So, what happens on the second offense? Well, when I go up here, we see that on the second offense, we're going to double it. Okay. So second offense of a rule within the same year results in double the fine, $5,000 maximum. That's going to get you there pretty quick, right? 2 of those, right? And then people say to me, well, what happens when they do it a third time? And I'm always looking at them. I go, well, we don't know. We've never had a third time. Most everybody gets it after the second $2,500. So that's a big ticket. Don't do that. Don't share your lockbox with people. People do it. I'm like, are you crazy? Okay, so we had people think, oh, I'm so smart, I'll never get caught. I give it to my assistant, or one of my agents wants to show the property, so I'll let them use my lockbox key. So we had a situation, I'll never forget. It's just one example. So we had the situation where we had a whole bunch of homeowners in a neighborhood called in and said, stuff's missing from my house, and there's no noticeable, no forcible entry that we can see anywhere. So we think it's the lockbox. Right. And so, but like 5 or 6 of them. And so stuff's missing from all these people's houses. So, so what we run the numbers and we see, oh, wow, this one agent is common to all of the complaining households. So the MLS reaches out to that agent and they said, hey, got a whole bunch of stuff missing from houses. And you know what? You're the common denominator on all that. And so, what they said? They said, it wasn't me. And so, I figure we have a prison system full of, it wasn't me. Okay. All right. I get it. Okay. Well, then who was it? And they said, well, I lent my lockbox key to the painter. Right. Now, remember, you've got to update these. What do we do in San Diego every day, every 3 days? In Virginia, it's every day, by the way. So, and now we use the phone, right? Your phone is your key and it validates you right away. But so they said, well, I lent the key to the painter because we're painting a house to put it on the market. And so it was him. Okay, so now you just snitched on the painter and you just snitched on yourself. So needless to say, what we did was, of course, we can't find the painter. We figured the painter was, just going around at lunch break, going out and stealing stuff. So we turned that over to the San Diego attorney's office. They pursued them for, using illicit means to get access to properties, burglary, right? It's robbery if there's a weapon involved, but burglary, don't go to law school to learn that. But so needless to say, we find the real estate agent the $2,500. And to my knowledge, they never did that again. But so the little things, there's all kinds of ways that people get caught. Like you share your username and password in the MLS with people, and you're logged in San Diego, you're looking at property, and then all of a sudden you're logging in Colorado Springs, right? And I always tell people, unless you're paranormal, you can't be in two places at one time. And so interestingly enough, if I'm logged into San Diego and then I log in Colorado Springs, I'm going to get a warning that says, up there, I'm going to get a warning that says you're about to cut yourself off in San Diego, even though, it would take you longer to get to Colorado Springs than the 2 hours that we give you to access your MLS, right? So there's a reason for all of that, okay? And so you're probably going to get a ticket, okay? Now sometimes like you'll be logged into your house and then you'll leave the house to go to the office and you'll log in and it'll say, you're on a computer over there. And you go, yeah, I know that. Boom. Okay. So we know that happens, but what frequently happens is the real estate agents. So I always tell people this. I always thought it was obvious, but when you click this X up here in the upper right hand corner, you see that? Yeah. When you click that X, that closes the browser. It does not log you out of the program. Okay. So in order to log out of the program, you got to click your name up here, and you got to click on log out. But clicking on the X does not log you out. It just logs you out of the browser. You're still in the MLS. So the reason that we tell you that is because if you're like at your office and you hit the X button and you X out of it, and then somebody else comes in behind you and turns the browser back on, they're in your MLS, right? So you don't want that, right? Okay, because you don't want people doing crazy things. Okay, people like me do crazy things to other people's stuff when I see that they're doing that. Okay, all right. Okay, good. Everybody good with that? Good. Let's go back to. We're going to make it. Okay, so So here's my list, and it's not a long list. Look at how many pages is this. This is going to be 3 pages. Okay, half of it is the definition. So section 2. Failure to notify participants of exclusions to exclusive right listing. So in other words, you took a listing, and was it Rose or Yana? So the previous seller's agent provided the seller with a list of buyers that they wanted protection in case they wrote an offer on it. And so you're the new agent, and that seller has to give you that list, right? I would probably contact the previous agent, okay? But that's just me being, risk management, right? But you didn't tell me that, and I put it in the MLS. And so the first agent, failure to notify participants of exclusions, they may have had it, but they didn't tell me. And so what if I had it and I didn't tell you? Well, then that would be a violation on my part. That'd be $500. Okay. Multiple property entries. We had that. We had a case where the broker said, we've been trying to sell this house. It was in Rancho Santa Fe, and it was a house for sale, and it's not selling. We want to also put it in vacant land. Well, as you know, vacant land is another heading, another category. And so we said, no, you can't have it as a house and vacant land. 99% of listings we had out there, people would be doing that, right? Getting as much exposure as they could get, right? And so they said, well, it's not selling. And so we gave them an option at that point, and we said, pick one, either as a house or as vacant land, because they said the house is uninhabitable. And so we looked in the MLS, it was in the MLS, it had a tenant in it. So this is an uninhabitable house with a tenant in it. And so we said, we'll let you pick one. I don't know if we do that today, but okay. But at that time we said, pick one, they did. They switched, put it in land, took it out of the MLS for purposes of a house for sale and put it in for land. It sold right away because it was the right price for land. Okay, it wasn't the right price for the property and the condition that it was in. But somebody came along, they bulldozed this house, right? And so, I had that happen, a property up in Malibu, $6 million property, and the buyer bulldozed it the next day. So, it happens. People do those things, right? Okay, we're running out of land, right? Del Mar, we got like nothing left. You have to rebuild or remodel or level a place and start over again because we're just out of land. Okay, so what else? Anything else in here that's exciting? There's failure to submit authorization to exclude form signed by the seller within 48 hours. Remember, I told you before, you 48 hours after getting all the necessary signatures, it either has to go in the MLS, subject to coming soon, or you have to send a copy of that to the MLS, a copy of the listing and the authorization to exclude form, the SELM form, to the MLS. It's $100 a day. I mean, I don't know. I got other ways. I have to arguably, a parking ticket in Del Mar anymore is almost $100, right? So it's almost cheaper just to park your car, take the ticket, and leave the car sit there all day, right? Okay. I didn't say that. You don't take me to task on that. Ulysses is a good friend of mine. I love the man. He's such a great guy. And every time he sees me, hey, Mr. Burke, how are you? It's like, I'm Kevin, not Mr. Burke. But anyway, so just be aware that that's what the rule says. Okay. Failure. Status changes. Remember what I said? 24 hours. Everything else is 24 hours. Okay. Listings marked withdrawn. And this one I don't understand, may not be re-entered in the system as new. So yeah, so you can withdraw it, but then you can also reactivate it subject to permission by the owner, reactivate the listing. You may not take it out and then put it back in as a new listing. The operative word here is new, okay, by the same brokers. That's $500, okay? Let's see what else. Very range language, unilateral offer of compensation. So you put in the MLS that it is, and it should say unilateral unconditional offer of compensation. So you put in the MLS and you say, we're paying 5% commission to the buyer's agent if you close by the end of October. Well, that is not an unconditional offer of compensation. That's going to get you a ticket, okay? Changes to offers of compensation. I had this happen where an agent came to me when, again, I was management at the time with this large company. And they came to me and they said, look, we just went under contract on this property. Here's a copy of the listing. I always tell you, print a copy of the listing at or about the time you wrote your offer. Okay, everybody hear what I'm saying? Print a copy of the listing, save it as a PDF, a copy of the listing at or about the time that you write your offer. Okay, so they did. So they come to me and they say, look, it says right in here, 4% commission to the buyer's agent. And I go, yeah. And they said, we just got the escrow instructions and it shows 3% to us. And it says, this I'm pretty sure this says 4. And as I said, yeah, well, remember the MLS, they know the nanosecond that the other agent changes something, right? Okay. And so I reached out to the other agent and I said, hey, you know what? You owe this guy 4%. It says right here, he printed it. Here's the date on the bottom. He printed it right about the time he wrote the offer because that's just a matter of policy. So you know what the guy told me to? He told me to do things that just aren't normal. And I went, really? And so, 15 minutes later, I get a call from Sandicor at the time, and they said, we took care of it. I go, really? Yeah. They said, oh, and by the way, we went and looked it up, and this individual had a pattern of changing the commission structure to the buyer's agent right after an accepted offer. They're looking at it as a program. It's a computer program. And so that was a very large ticket because the individual knew what they were doing. They were doing it on purpose. They were doing it to get the offer to come in and then changing it in the middle. So the changes offers of compensation is $1,000. I assure you they were fined a lot more than $1,000. Okay, everybody okay with that? So print that copy of that listing at or about the time you write your offer. Failure to disclose your interest in the confidential remarks. So, you own the property. You need to display that. You need to put that in the confidential remarks that you are the owner, agent, whatever, or one or more of the sellers has a California real estate license or that kind of thing. In Virginia, and I sell a lot of homes in Virginia as well, the contract in Virginia actually says, are you the agent related to the buyer on this form? And if so, where do you have your licenses? I had to attach it as an addendum because it wouldn't fit in the little space they gave you. But that's just the way the rules work, right? You must disclose either your familial interest, like my brother, or you must disclose that you, in fact, are the buyer or the seller. And I had a case on that where we were representing a buyer. Property was owned in trust. The buyer discovers in the course of the transaction that the seller's agent was the trust, right? No disclosure anywhere about that. They figured, now you won't know that I'm a broker, that kind of thing. And so that, needless to say, I said, well, what do you want to do? They're violating the MLS. They said, don't worry about that part. We'll take care of this after closing. So whenever the buyer says something like that, that means they're going to litigate against the agent who failed to disclose their interest in the property. Okay, and that's a DRE requirement as well. What else? There you go. Failure to obtain written authorization from the seller before filing an extension or renewal. Okay, can't make this stuff up. So make sure you have written authorization, right? Remember that MT form, modification of terms? It's $1,000 ticket. All right. Failure to disclose the existence of a dual or variable commission arrangement. So you took the listing and you made a deal with the seller that if you took the listing at 10%, but if you sell it yourself, you'll do it for 8%, the whole thing for 8%. That is a variable commission. That is a dual or variable commission arrangement. So you must disclose that. And there's a form field in your MLS, and that's going to be called my CVR. So let's go back over here to my listings, and we're going to go up here to the top, listing facts, and that's going to be my CVR field. I'm not going to spend a lot of time looking for it, but I don't find it right away. Here we go. Variable commission. It's a required field, right? And it's a yes or no question. Okay. So did you give the seller a break at the time of the listing? Now, I understand that people do that, later on in a transaction, not necessarily at the beginning of the transaction, but here's the thing. This applies to the scenario where they do it at the time of the listing. Okay. Now, when you're calling the other agent, and the other agent says, I've got 15 offers on the property, you want to ask the other agent, how many of those are yours, right? And they have to answer you that. You can file a complaint against that, okay? How many of those offers are yours? Okay, that's the first question. The second question is, did you give the seller a break on any of those transactions? Okay, so, you have a right to know. And if you did, that way you can be competitive with that if you have to do that, okay? Everybody good? All right, back over to my screen. Failure to obtain written authorization to submit a listing to the MLS. In other words, you put the listing in the multiple listing service, but you didn't have a listing agreement with the seller. Now, the DRE has a position on that as well. They call it false advertising, intentional misrepresentation. Those are torts, right? Okay. MLS contacts you, says, send us your paperwork, and you don't do that. Within 24 hours. I mean, committing forgery at that point, probably not a good idea. Inaccurate information. Take a look at the field case in Otay Mesa, the Otay Water District. Take a look at that case for an agent that incorrectly told the buyer that the property was a larger square footage than it was, and that the easement that was on the property was not as onerous as it was. And those are things that millions of dollars in legal fees later went all the way to the appellate court. So failure to conduct appointments for showings. If I have 24 hours. If I contact the seller's agent, they've got to respond to me. And our national rules now say that if they use a lockbox other than the local lockbox, which ours is central lock, then they must respond within 4 hours to give me the code or give me access to the property. Okay, so failure to conduct appointments is going to be a violation of our MLS, but it may also be a violation of our code of ethics and our code of ethics. So I turned a broker in that everything was by text message, and it was like, just some of the insane stuff that was going back and forth. And I don't text; it was one of our agents that did it. So okay, we documented everything. Okay, so presentation of offers. How many times did you send over an offer? They never presented it. Submission of offers. You get an offer and you never present it to the seller or the seller's agent, or if you're the seller's agent as well, you don't present that offer because you got another one you like better. Okay. Here's change of compensation offered by cooperating broker. And so did you strong hand the buyer's broker and say, I'm not going to pay you, we'll do the deal if you'll reduce your commission? That's going to be a violation. All right. What else in here? Anything exciting in here? You didn't report it sold. I mean, that's actually more common than you think, where they never put it in as the sale, and they did not put in the correct sales price. So sometimes we'll have investors who will say, I don't want the subsequent buyer because I'm going to flip it. I don't want the subsequent buyer to know how much I paid for it. So the agent will go ahead and put it in as a sale for $0. Well, that's going to be a violation of our rules, as well as other rules. And so that would be an example of with the correct sales price. There's about a 7 question pattern that you have to follow in order to be able to do that. And then you got to deal with the county as well. So that's a whole other issue. Okay. All right. So listings that are marked canceled may not be re-entered as new within 30 days by the same brokerage again. Media must be of the subject property. We've already talked about that. Photographs within 72 hours. You put a for sale sign on somebody else's property. Let's see. Failure to obtain prior written consent of the listing broker when advertising their listing. So, and it says listing broker, by the way. It doesn't say, it should say seller's broker, but it doesn't say the seller's agent, right? So if you're going to advertise somebody else's property, I would get the broker's permission to do that, okay? And so I'm sure they're going to make you go through hoops or whatever, but that's something you've got to do. Let's see, false or misleading advertising. Some of these, again, are DRE violations. What else? I think we're getting to the end of it. Unauthorized placement of a lockbox. And I just talked about this last week in a class I was doing. So you must have approval to put a box on a property. Normally we get that approval in the listing agreement. But if you have a tenant in the property, the tenant is not a party of the listing agreement, you need to use that KLA form, okay, the key safe lockbox addendum. I use that form anyway, even when I don't have a tenant, because I want the seller to understand that we don't have insurance to cover their toys, right? You know, put things away, you know, common sense. You know, I've gone into more than one caravan open house and there's a gun on the dresser, or knives, or pictures that I don't think are appropriate anywhere. You know, things like money clips, you know, stuff like that. I don't think it's appropriate to have all that stuff out there, but people do it. So it's a $1,000 ticket. Now, I had agents when I was management back in the 90s with a big company. And I had an agent that used to say to me, oh yeah, if I see a lockbox, I just go ahead and go in. So, you know, then I get the phone call with you know, the alarms going off, or, you know, the client got bit by the dog, you know, things that would have been in the MLS if you had looked, but instead you just went right on through and went ahead and showed the house anyway. So what else in there? Unauthorized entrance to a property without the listing broker's permission. Remember, just because they have a box doesn't mean you have permission to use it. Okay, that's why we got to check that MLS to see, you know, what do the instructions say? Remember my listing that says dog will bite? Got it? Okay, excuse me a second. For a while. Okay, and that's it. There's not a lot of stuff in there. I think that it's enough to know about. But as I said earlier, what was my favorite was here, 11.7.1, failure to submit a photograph or rendering within 72 hours. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to look up what was it again? 7.2.1, 11.7.1. 12 years of college down the tubes. So we're going to go to 11, see how these all correspond, supposedly. I've done this before live and then found out there was a mistake. And so I hate to call people out on that, but there it is, 11.7. Photographs, virtual tours, and other media on the MLS. So there it is. Now I know, here's the whole breakdown. There's 11.7.1, mandatory submission of photographs and renderings, right? So back over to my schedule fines. Here it is, 11.7.1. Everybody follow me on that? Okay, so those things are important things. And again, all this stuff that I've shown you today, I am more than happy to send this to you, okay? So let's go back. I think I've covered a lot of stuff. Let's take a look at our PowerPoint real fast here. There we go. Let's see, what did I miss? How are the violations identified? So a couple things to think about. Multiple ways of how we identify them. So there is a program called Data Checker. And Data Checker is an automatic software program that picks up missing photos. Again, you get an email right away. Misuse of the remarks section, you put a telephone number in there, or, you know, contact the owner directly, or you put a website or an email address in there. It knows what it's looking for. Now, I have seen people go in and change their email address in the remarks section, you know, leaving spaces in between things so that they think the program's not going to catch them. Now you did something to intentionally evade the rule, and that's just going to be a bigger ticket. So one of the things we didn't talk about is giving credit to the other broker for the sale. So I had a situation where there was a broker that I wrote an offer on the property. We went under contract, and they reported themselves as the buyer's agent. And so I called them up and I said, would you please, there's a mistake somehow. You need to put me in as the buyer's agent. And they said, no, go pound sand or something equally enticing. And so, 15 minutes later, the MLS is calling them on the phone and they said, oh, did you bring in the buyer? And they said, well, technically our company did because we were with the same big company, big block company, but not big block realty, but big block company. And so they said, you need to give Kevin credit for that. And so they did. So he did. He changed it back, because he didn't want to get a ticket for that. About 30 days after closing, remember how I said all this stuff is so inextricably intertwined, the law says. And so I'm going in there, I'm about 30 days after closing, I'm looking around because I sell a lot of houses, folks. I was doing 100, 150 deals a year, okay? And I go in, I'm just looking to see which ones I got credit. They changed it back. So the agent changed the information back after being told to change it back to my name. They waited until after closing and they put themselves back in as the agent. And so that was a really big ticket. So you saw 1,000. No, this is much more than $1,000. Why? Because you upset the MLS. The MLS told you not to do that, and you did. It's kind of like, to the child, don't touch that. It's hot, and then they have to. Sometimes they just got to touch it, and you hope they survive it, right? But he changed it back. And so it was a big ticket. Since that time, by the way, you do not have the ability. Once you mark a property as closed, once you do that, you do not have the ability to change anything. So the only person that can change it after that is the MLS. So be really careful what you got in your listing, because it'll be forever indelibly imprinted on people's minds and on the internet based on when you closed it, unless you want to, contact the MLS and hopefully they'll fix it for you without penalty. Okay. Missing room sizes, it looks for that. You got to have those room dimensions in there. Okay. Again, don't copy other people's homework. Listings that have been not been reported sold final. So in other words, you didn't report it as sold, we're going to get complaints from people that are going to call us up and say, hey, this person's got this listing in the MLS and it was sold 2 weeks ago. I had it happen. I mean, we were showing a property, knocked on the door, it was supposed to be vacant, signs in the yard, lockbox on the door. We knock on the door, there's clearly somebody inside. They come to the door. We say, who are you? And they turned to us and said, well, we own this place. Who are you? And we said, well, we're the agents. We're showing the property. Our client's right here. They said, we closed on this 2 weeks ago. Can you imagine being in a property? And you know what they said? They said, we've been trying to get the agent to take the sign down and get the lockbox off the door. And because of this very eventuality, people are knocking on our door. So I said, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. And of course, it was gone. It was down the next day. I'm sure that was a penalty of a number of sorts. So anyway, after closing, of course, you got to report it sold. There is a correction button whereby agents logged into Paragon can anonymously report, inquire about accuracy of listing data. Again, remember, never a problem asking a question. Members can report violations or inquire by email to rules@sdmls.com. Now, I already showed you the correction link, right? I jumped ahead of myself because I was pretty excited about the subject matter today. SDMLS is dedicated to your success. We really want you to do well. And again, the integrity of the database is important, but we're going to put education first. We're going to assume that, just like me, if one of Linda's agents makes a mistake, I'm going to take the blame for that. I'm going to say, hey, you know what? I mustn't have explained it to them to do it the right way. I will have that conversation with them. I certainly don't want Linda angry with me, but I'm going to, I'll get a hold of the agent. I said, maybe I wasn't clear when we talked about this, but here's how it should have been. Okay, so the goal, again, is data integrity. The goal is not punishment. Our goal is not to punish agents. The fines are just there because you didn't listen. Most all of the items that we've talked about, you'll get a warning. Will you get 2? I don't know. I probably wouldn't chance it. Will you get 3? Highly unlikely. You're going to get a ticket by that point. And then, like you saw, twice in the same year, we're going to double it, and then other things happen that are just really not very friendly. So, we don't break anybody's knees or anything. That's not so. But the goal is to work with subscribers to provide the most accurate and up-to-date information. Do a quick inventory of your listings. Go through your listings. If you don't have any listings, now you know how to do them properly. Get that listing input sheet. We actually have a listing input sheet in our office. I should probably show you that. So here's what the listing input sheet looks like. I'm going to go back up here again. I'll share all this with you. Let's see, where is it? Here it is. So we have, in fact, we've already filled out some of it. Oh, can you see that? No. Okay, good. I'm glad I checked. Okay, hang on a second. Coming up. Here we go. So I've actually already filled some of it out, right? Because we've got Adobe Pro 11. And so I filled in some of this stuff. So, but this is what I take on my listing appointment. All right. All of our agents do this. Some of the stuff's already filled out because these are our office policy things, right? So it really cuts down on your workload, things that you got to do. Everything in blue has to be completed, right? That kind of thing. Okay. So, here's my room dimensions. So the yellow is what I've coded it to say so that people know that they need to ask to get the rooms measured. Okay. And as I always say in my classes, I always bring a tape measure because I'm old school. So I'm, one of those things that I have one in here. Tape. Yeah, here we go. I have a tape measure. Anybody, you all know what this is? Tape measure. Okay. So anyway, I always hold this end right here. That's the one with 0 on it. Okay. And then I always give the other end to the seller and they hold it down over there. And they say, why are we holding this end? And I say, because that's the business end. And then they ask me, what does that mean? The business end. I said, that's the end we get sued on. And what? And it's like, yeah. So let's be really sure about what the measurements are of that room. And I'm going to blame it on you every single time. And they laugh. The funniest thing they ever heard, but they're always kind of like, uh-oh, all right, this guy knows what he's doing. So do that, right? Say, hey, you're holding the business end. This is the one that the lawsuits happen with. Okay, so I was telling them that. I mean, and they think it's funny, but they're holding the back of their head. They're going, "Oh boy, I don't know. Watch out for this guy." Okay, so there's my room dimensions, and then again, photographs and all that kind of stuff. So I always tell you, make sure you take a tape measure with you. Make sure you take a camera with you, or I don't know. Some of these cell phones today are amazing at taking pictures. So that's what that's all about. That's my listing input sheet. So going back here, so. We suggest to make sure you don't run into the top 10 violations. And so let's talk about that. Here's the top 10 violations. 1, failure to report the listing sold. That is the #1 most common violation, okay? Reporting an inaccurate buyer's agent. We have the team lead takes credit for it, right? So the listing had to be in the team lead's name. Otherwise, they can't do that. Including branded media. So, you've got, it's all about me and my company and all that. That's called branded media, your picture in the virtual tour, things like that. That's going to be an 11.7 violation, okay? And then we've got use of photos that are not of the subject property. So remember my ocean view thing? View from the subject property or amenities included in the HOA, picture of the tennis court, whatever. I always recommend a picture of the front door, that kind of thing, always as a start. Okay. Some cases they include people and or signage, stuff like that, another home sold by. Use of another member's photos, that's 11.7 again. Use of another member's photos without their permission. I always get a kick out of that case that I told you about earlier today. Misuse of the public remarks section. So that's going to include a lot of things like open house or, see more pictures ad or contact seller directly or property's vacant. We don't want you telling everybody it's vacant, right? We have a box to check in the MLS for that, but we don't want you telling everybody that the property's vacant. We don't want the world to know that. It invites vandalism. It invites people moving in. I've had it happen. I've gone to show properties and there's clearly people living in one of the bedrooms, right? One of the bedrooms, nowhere else in the house, but in one of the bedrooms. Okay, so including contact information, open house information, showing instructions, reference to vacancy, again, rule 12.5, including live open house information in showings and in unrelated fields. That's going to be a violation. Misleading showing instructions. Sometimes people, the property really isn't showable, but they know they have to make it showable, and so they'll put something in there, something crazy like call for appointment when the property's not even available for showings until a later date. Inaccurate residential style. I remember my case about my single family detached home versus my vacant land. A lot of times we get into the argument about what is attached, right? And so that if you have a question about that, you're going to look at the styles. So going back over here, let me see here, my residential documents, and you're going to go down. Where's the document? We've got a document in here that talks about the different residential styles of the property. So here we go, residential style definitions. And that'll tell you what the difference is. Anytime it's attached to another property, then it's attached, right? I think that's pretty clear. And then it can't be attached and detached at the same time, all right? So inaccurate residential style, and then a townhouse entered as detached property. So I sold a property in Del Mar on 10th Street, and that property was no attachment to any other property. The legal description was that it was a condo. Now that's the legal description of the property. So it was a condominium, but it was a single family detached house all day long. And so the MLS wanted to see it as a detached house. I mean, just because the legal description said condo doesn't mean that it's now a townhouse. It's just not. It's the physical characteristics of the property. Excuse me. All right, clear cooperation violations are being reported due to members not including coming soon status in their searches. Interestingly enough, staff is finding that most members are actually in compliance. We've gotten really good about that. Really good about letting everybody know. So in coming soon, it doesn't get advertised out to the public, right? It's within our MLS, right? But again, the minute that you start advertising it to the public, you've got to make it active. You got to take it out of coming soon status. Okay. All right. Okay, well, thank you for being here today. I'm gonna let you go a couple minutes early, but I want you to know a couple of changes are coming along. So our discussion of MLS rules, because knowing is better than guessing. You can reach out to San Diego Association Education SDAR. Adrian is over there. He's doing a great job. I like Adrian. Appreciate everything that Adrian does. But I've been loading everything up onto the YouTube website. So all my webinars are going up onto the YouTube website. And by the way, I'm going to start doing podcasts, which are much smaller versions of these things. So like if you want a breakdown of, coming soon, for example, I'll do a little 20-minute thing on coming soon, that kind of thing. How to fill out the purchase agreement. It used to be that I was teaching them for San Diego. They used to do paragraph by paragraph. And so, listen, the DRE, when I created the 5 credit hour class that the DRE approved, they called me on the phone because they make you do 3 pages per every hour of instruction. So that would be 15, right? 5 times 3 is 15. I had like 36 pages, and they called me on the phone. They said, "We are so excited to get to read your take on the new purchase agreement," right? So this is after I did a demonstration for them and their special investigators. 400 of them. So I'm loading all this stuff up onto the YouTube website. Get your QR code reader ready. There it is. You can take a picture of that. That'll take you right straight to the website. You can also just go into your browser window and just type in @Burke Real Estate Consultants Inc. And I had to do all this because the DRE says when I'm offering these classes for presentation, I have to put the general information page on, somewhere on the internet, and that's going to be on our website. I'll put it up there so that you can get to it pretty easily. Okay. You can also go to the bit.ly link. That's bit.ly/real-estate-ed. Case is important. And please remember, when you go there, would you please do me a favor, like and subscribe. I don't get paid for any of this. It just makes me feel good, right? But subscribe, because as I update, so I did this class a couple of months ago. So now there'll be a new version of it. And but you won't know that unless you subscribe, and then it'll tell you when you log into YouTube that it's there. I'm probably gonna start using Podbean for my podcast, but again, I want to make this easy on everybody. I don't want it to be really that complicated. As I said before, if you look good, you make me look good. I really want you to look good. Okay. I don't view anyone else out there as competition. I think we're all working together. Okay. All right. And so, when one of us does a bad thing, everybody hears about it. All right. So, I do have weekly email updates that go out. I don't put people on it unless you ask to be put on it. So, and again, I'll have because they're going to probably be filtering me out of trainings here at San Diego. I'm not sure what their agenda is. I know they've got a lot of stuff with Tom Ferry, and I like Tom Ferry. I think he's a neat guy. So anyway, I want to still reach out and help my realtor friends, my fellow agents. So the newsletter is going to be the way I'm going to be marketing it to people. I've got quite a following on that, but I do want to help you. So that being said, are there any other questions that I can answer for anybody while we're here today? I am going to come back this afternoon, and I'm going to teach you how to find pre-foreclosure properties in San Diego. You'll be surprised how many of them there are. And that'll be at 2 o'clock. So I thank you all for being here today. I very much appreciate the value of your time. And as we say from my hometown of Del Mar, I look forward to seeing you around the track. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye for now.